Is this hello? Is my name Michael Miller? Is this a broadcast out for anyone interested in surviving and thriving? As Pilates instructors, students, and anyone else walking around in a human body? That's a question. Will I put as the title on my Facebook broadcast of this the question, why is it called the spine corrector? Did I learn that when you spend so much energy here on YouTube talking to you, that you then go into Facebook and try to replicate that energy? It never works and doesn't happen. And because I talk so long, this is all a question, right? Did you see my diminution of mental faculty? At least if you went and watched the Facebook one thereafter. So why is it called the spine corrector? What makes you think you know why it's that way? Or is the spine corrector just a name and there is no use for it? Does the name have any connection to the words in it to express an intent? Does any of that exist in there? Why the spine corrector? Why is it called that? And where do you get your opinion about why that is? And is there anything other than opinion as to why it is called the spine corrector? Do you know the MMP POV about why the spine corrector is named that? Does it matter to you at all if the name is meant to mean something or not? And is it merely just a structure, a support that facilitates movement, that you add into your movement? Because to me, Pilates is control, isn't it? And isn't it about controlling movement? And not only didn't Joe express himself when he wrote that contrology is complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit, and didn't he express himself in the very next paragraph that starts out, contrology develops the body uniformly? And didn't he express himself in the sequence of his exercises? The sequence and his exercises, like it's the exercises and the order they're in. Right? When you take the three things from Joe's book, you can come to an explanation of Pilates And it's just one explanation, but it's based on those three things in Joe's book, and has nothing to do with any of the folklore that Pilates is primarily made up of in 2020. And will be for hundreds of more years. But if you want to survive as a Pilates instructor, to me, it has always mattered to understand why, in order to enhance your engagement with whatever it is you're doing. Pilates or martial arts or shooting or sweeping. So why are you listening? Christy, why are you listening? I don't know why. And it's beyond me that you'd listen at all, and yet if you didn't listen, wouldn't be completely taken by the point of view I share with you that comes in two theories. So what is Michael Miller Pilates? Well, it's a theory that Pilates is an experience. And then along with that, or what came out of that, is a recognition of the biomechanics that have come into being in the body over a long time. But there's rotational dynamic at the hips, the shoulders, the ears, the knees, the ankles, and the metatarsals. And those rotational dynamics that the body has grown into are the basis of stabilizing, or I want to say effectuate, but that's such a snobby word, have happen the movement that we are capable of. These are the biomechanics of the body, and no one in my generation and knows me can come to see the fact of the matter that I claim it to be. Now it may not be, it just may be a fantasy, but really, to me, and what I urge you to recognize, the sooner you get to the fact of the matter and that it's confirmed in your own sensation, when you understand the biomechanics and embrace the notion that these biomechanics exist within the body, the human being, Pilates doesn't matter yet at all compared to recognizing how core new tension triggers uniform usage of the musculature, thereby making it more easy to move. I wanted to go off into saying makes you lighter in space, and I don't know that that's technically true, from pure science, but the level of your dynamic engagement changes how much load is participating versus how much load is just there being held up. Okay? So core new tension is the body reaching into what facilitates movement. C'est vrai. C'est dommage, mais c'est vrai. I lost all my questions, didn't I? So my question that all this came from about wasn't it? What don't you get about core new tension? That's my fundamental question today, is what don't you get about core new tension? What do you refuse to acknowledge or entertain the notion of that might actually be true and real and sensational that you can discover in yourself if you're willing to go there. And by that, all I mean is making oppositional rotation between axes. I'm demonstrating ears to shoulders. When your rib cage pulls down like an awning, it's the TVA that flies you down into the rotation of the hip, or connects you. TVA, transverse abdominis. Recognize the dynamic configuration of the body's ability to engage in coordination. You fly the TVA to get there, meaning that the engagement of the transverse abdominis is what is the connection between the rib cage into the rotation at the hips. You can hear ribs in, ribs in, ribs in. There's a good thing I write about. You know, how many of us have gone through the learning process of Pilates, have had us cued as ribs in. Like, how do you keep your ribs in? Well, if you really want to know how to keep your ribs in, recognize the connection of the rib cage through the rectus abdominis into the hips, and the fact that you're drawing rotation between the shoulders and the hips. Recognize that you may have a spine, but it's the muscular rotation of the grip at the hips and the rotation at the shoulders. It's in that rotation that it presses open. It presses apart. Because the excess, when you take a grip tighter, there's more excess that's not as much a part of the grip. And it's going tighter into the center that extrudes outwards from the grip. And that's why oppositional rotation between axes is eccentric in its expression. It's not like you do this to get that. It's in doing this that happens. Maybe that's the same thing somatically. Core new tension is in its expression pressing out between two axes of rotation that are in opposition to one another, and it's from that opposition that the stretch, the eccentricity comes about. Right? So, all my questions. Would you mind if I asked a question of you? What do you apply to everything else that you learn from Pilates? What do you apply to everything else that you learn from Pilates? Do you think there's such a thing as Pilates that's personal and Pilates that's universal? Have you ever had a Pilates instructor tell you that Pilates is sacred? Can you see how that expression is one of how it is taken personally? Can you see that? Right? Is there anything universal about Pilates that people then take into a sacred realm personally? Or did that instructor mean that it's sacred and whatever that means. Does it mean it's unknowable? Is doing Pilates like a sacred ritual that, well, see, there you get off into me wanting to agree with some of those questions, don't you think? How might you describe a relationship, if any, between what's personal and universal? Is there anything universal at all? See, 2020, and we're in the dark ages of Pilates, don't you think? So, who knows where this is going on Facebook, but I gotta leave now so that I don't start out spent on Facebook and have it deteriorate from there. Don't you think that's a good idea? Is it okay if I ask you this last question on the way out the door? Is this question, is that okay with you? What does survival mean to you? Have you heard me say at the beginning of every broadcast, it's about surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor, student, or a human being? You've heard me say that. What does survival mean to you? And then off on a particular vein of that recently, my question would be, are you a prepper? Meaning you're in America, they have this whole group of people that have been preparing for disaster and doom, and when the doo-doo hits the fan and all of that, a prepper. And I don't know if preppers know that being able to do the mat is the ultimate in prepper conditioning for the human body. Because it's so mirrors the reality you're trying to survive in, and focuses on the ideal aspects of the reality that you're in. Like gravity is a uniform medium. Like there's such a thing as a point and 2 points that make a line, which makes for straight. And the human organism uses oppositional rotation between axes to feel that sense of, in doing that, you get the muscular engagement that you're after, more uniform. And as an outshoot of that, or something that comes off of engaging in core new tension, is the sensation that the tension gives you. And that's a definite sensation between the 2 points. And even more sensational when you line it up in gravity. What don't you get about core new tension? What does survival mean to you? Do you see that when I ask as a prepper, Pilates is the ultimate training tool? It is for everyone. Because that's not only with the conditioning that comes off of to the body, just at a body level, the conditioning of the musculature, it's the striving for and developing depth in the coordination between your capacities of your being, your thinking, and your observing. There's where the thinking has this curtain that it believes there is no beyond. There's only thinking. A lot of the human race is all coming from there. And that's normal. It's a distribution of spectrum in terms of degrees and layers and depths and levels. But in doing Pilates, you pursue the choreography because of its reflection. It's because it's a reaction to the reality that we find ourselves in. In as much that, in terms of flexion, extension, side bending, rotation, torsion, as to the combining of capacities that's required in some of the most stressful situations, like running through the jungle, being eaten, like dancing every night on the stage and needing your body to live up to the demands you place on it. Surviving. So, can being alive, live forever? Can you read between the lines? Can you read between the lines? Can you connect the dots? What happens when you connect the dots in one of those picture books where you connect the dots by the number, right? You see something beyond. In Pilates, especially because of the petri dish of folklore, it can be tough to figure out where the dots are, to see the picture to be revealed, the picture that's there, if you connect the dots. With me, CT and MMP are both theories that you can feel. I'm not claiming anything more than that. They're just theories, but within each theory, one about biomechanics and one about Pilates. Can you connect the dots? Can you evaluate points of view? Do you know how to make an offer? It's not hard, and the more I do it, the easier it is. It says something in a framework and a context of how you're willing to share yourself in terms of the information that you have. Do you know how to add 2 and 2? Do you know how to make an offer? Do you know that I made an offer recently to someone that wanted to come from the point of view that Pilates had no essence of its own, and that there's a lot of good exercises, and it's even arguable about what makes one better than the other, right? So much of the money involved in Pilates depends upon it not having an essence of its own. And the inconvenient truth is that Pilates does have an essence of its own. Now, you don't have to make it inconvenient to anybody. Just be aware of it. so that it takes you closer to what you want in the doing of Pilates and empowers you to take others closer to what they're looking for if they're looking to do Pilates. Do you know how to direct your thinking? Do you know the difference between daydreaming and directing your thinking? Do you ever recognize that wherever you thought you were directing your thinking to, it turned into daydreaming? Or, when that hits you, that there's something different from daydreaming, and that might be directing your thinking. I'm a Walter Mitty from the get-go. Maybe that's why I try to urge others like you to direct your thinking. Driving a car, right? You're thinking. Geist.